The Denver Broncos are 1-1 after playing the Seattle Seahawks and the Houston Texans. It's not where they expected to be. Nathaniel Hackett is already facing increased scrutiny of his decisions, and the overall performances of the team have created pessimism in the fan base. After acquiring Russell Wilson in the offseason, the Broncos were supposed to get off to a fast start against a soft schedule and prove they could be contenders in the AFC. But they haven't. And while Hackett is the easy target, Wilson is the primary reason for their poor displays. The first play we're going to look at is against the Houston Texans. Wilson is under centre as part of a run-oriented alignment. The Broncos are going to set up a half-field read with three routes working together to create a triangle of options in the coverage on that side. After executing the play fake, Wilson turns around and looks wide to the right side. He has a receiver running a wheel route outside the numbers. That receiver is following a post route downfield. Wilson can see that the receiver is tightly covered. He can also see that the cornerback is looking at the receiver, not looking back for the ball. His receiver isn't open at this point, and since the cornerback isn't going to sit down in the zone, Wilson can anticipate the two running side by side down the sideline together. In the same line of vision, he can see his running back open in the flat, with the defender responsible for him dropping off into space. Wilson should take that check down for a good gain on an early down. Instead, he forces the ball down the sideline as if chasing a big play out of desperation. This is a bad decision that is further emphasised when you see the open receiver underneath after the ball is thrown. Let's switch from a run alignment and shot play design to a spread formation and empty backfield. Here we get another example of Wilson not seeing the coverage properly. It's a Texans game again. Wilson has three receivers on the wide side of the field to the right and two receivers on the narrow side of the field to his left. When the ball is snapped, the defense rushes 4 and drops into zone. There's a miscommunication on the wide side of the field, and Wilson should recognise this because he looks directly at the cornerback outside the numbers who makes a mistake. That defender has moved himself into no man's land. He's attracted to the seam route receiver on his inside, while he should account for the curl route on his outside. Wilson should know he's throwing the ball at this point. And when the play moves forward for a split second, you can see the both receivers are wide open and the cornerback second guesses himself further so that he's even further away from both receivers. Instead of throwing the ball within the timing of the play, Wilson instead dips his shoulders and drops his eyes before running out of the back of a clean pocket. He's sacked despite the defense's coverage failing and his pass protection winning. This should have been an easy completion, not a self-inflicted sack. At the goal line, the Broncos use motion from left to right before the snap. This leads to a defender trailing his receiver across the formation, which suggests man coverage to the quarterback. The Broncos have routes called to beat man coverage, but when the ball is snapped, the defense drops into zone and rushes 4. Still, despite the play call being better suited to beat man coverage, Wilson has 3 receivers working over the middle of the field who will be open within the timing of the play. His running back is wide open from the start. One of his receivers is open after the initial phase of the play, and the second receiver loops from the outside in to come open at the back of the end zone. He's running across into wide open space. Wilson is standing in a pocket with more space than he could ever ask for. Despite looking directly at the running back's curl route, he doesn't throw the ball. Instead, he looks away from his running back before seemingly catching him out of the corner of his eye to go back to the play late. By that point, the defensive linemen have blocked the passing lane. This should have been an easy score, and Wilson was the only reason that it wasn't. For this play against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 1, the defense shows quarters coverage before the snap and drops into it after the snap. The only slight quirk here is the cornerback at the bottom of the screen. He jumps to the receiver's short out route underneath. That's where Wilson looks when he gets the ball, but he doesn't keep his eyes there for very long. He should recognise the opportunity to hit his skinny post route in the space over the middle of the field. He can even manipulate the linebacker in coverage to that side if he pump fakes or holds his eyes to the outside for a moment. That would move the linebacker out of the passing lane even further. But instead, he tries to scramble and is easily stopped by the redirecting pass rushers over the middle before he can break free into the secondary. Wilson has never played with pocket discipline or timing as a passer. The ball has always either come out instantly at the snap or come out late in the play after his receiver's routes have been run. Now that he's old and his physical attributes are in decline, he's not going to get away with these types of plays as often. He's not going to thrive outside of structure as often, but he will continue to fail inside structure repeatedly. You can see the receiver would have been wide open over the middle even without Wilson manipulating the linebacker in coverage. This was just an awful coverage read and an awful decision. He predetermined what he was going to do as soon as he saw the cornerback on the outside jump forward. That's a lack of poise and a lack of composure within the pocket. Now we jump to a 4 verts concept from the same game. The Seahawks are again sitting off in a passive defensive play call. This gives Wilson time to hold the ball in the pocket. When the ball is snapped, he looks to the seam route on the left before coming to the right side. His eye movement pushed 5 defenders to the left side of the field, leaving his running back and Cortland Sutton in one-on-one coverage on the right side of the field. They have the whole half of that field to work in. Sutton is the Broncos' best receiver and he's capable of winning jump balls consistently. When Wilson has him in single coverage deep downfield, the odds are in the offense's favour. This is a shot he should take more often than not. But even if he doesn't take the one-on-one sideline shot on the right side of the field, he definitely shouldn't abandon this clean pocket to run into the left flat, where he knows all of the defenders are. You can see from the end zone angle that Wilson isn't aware of his surroundings. He again crouches down and looks over both shoulders before running in the opposite direction. There is no receiver open on this side of the field, but he forces a throw anyway. The receiver makes a good play on the ball to make it look like it was close, but this pass was never going to be completed. This is a missed opportunity that comes from a fundamental lack of understanding of what the defense was doing and what the offense's strengths are. He should have played to his strengths with Cortland Sutton early in the play, or he should have moved to the right side where the space was. Daring Wilson to stay in the pocket is a good strategy against him. You can do this by rushing 3 defenders and dropping 8 into coverage. The Seahawks know this better than anyone, and they do that in this occasion with their right side defensive end dropping into space underneath. The end zone angle shows us Wilson's eyes flash rapidly from left to right before he turns to break the pocket. He had receivers open if he had gone slower through his progression, but he rushed. And more importantly, he should have never left the middle of the pocket here. He has to stay in the pocket to stress the coverage on both sides of the field. As soon as he runs to the left flat, it's easy for the defense to converge on him. There are fewer options to throw the ball and he's less likely to be able to escape on a scramble. Going back to the Texans game, we can see the defense throwing a double A-gap blitz before the snap. Wilson has to catch the snap, execute his drop, and diagnose the coverage to get the ball out. Let's zoom in on his footwork in the pocket to see why this play fails. Inexplicably, Wilson's feet are flat throughout his drop. That means he's never set up to throw the ball. He's never in a comfortable position to transition into a throwing motion. It also means he doesn't gain depth in the pocket, so he's in a position to be tripped up by his left tackle. Wilson falls down and essentially sacks himself in the end. The real frustration on display is that all of his receivers were open. The Texans blitz and play off-man coverage in behind, so the slants that each receiver is running are open. But Wilson was instead focused on his running back from the get-go. He was slowed down by the defensive end, and since Wilson wasn't set up to throw the ball properly to anyone else, the sack was inevitable. He knows he can flip the ball to his running back without setting his feet, but he can't throw a slant without setting his feet. Moving into sacks and courting too much pressure has been a staple of Wilson's whole career. His offensive line typically carries all the blame for his big sack and pressure numbers, but the quarterback is heavily responsible each season. On this play, the Seahawks send pressure through the middle. It's successful, but Wilson can see it early and has space to adapt. He also has an attached lineman who he can recreate leverage for if he moves properly. If he simply stays upright in a passing posture and slides to his right here, he's in position to set and throw the ball cleanly while avoiding the pass rush. Instead, he drops his shoulder, drops his eyes, and moves left, into the rushing lane of the arriving defender. There's no way of him avoiding the sack here because he's put himself in a position at the mercy of the defense. He submits to the sack prematurely instead of trying to avoid it and extend the play within the pocket. To help Wilson, he needs a heavy dose of play action, half-field reads and narrow concept play designs. During his best years he excelled in those play designs, but over recent years he's become less and less efficient in those scenarios. On this play, we see the Broncos go to a flea flicker. It's very early in the season to be going to flea flickers. It's normally a desperation play when you need to get your offense going. When Wilson catches the ball on the throwback from his running back, he has 2 receivers running routes downfield. The deep shot is open, and he can take it if he wants to try and score a touchdown immediately. The crossing route is wide open, and he can take that if he wants a chunk play. It's an easier option. Wilson smartly picks that route. Jerry Jeudy has more than a step on the defender when Wilson begins his throwing motion. Wilson should zip this ball in front of Jeudy to lead him through the wide open space and towards the sideline. Jeudy should even be able to turn upfield and run after the catch if the ball is thrown properly. But instead of leading Jeudy across the field, Wilson throws the trailing cornerback back into the catch point. He turns this into a contested catch. Jeudy has to slow down and reach up as the ball drifts towards him. Not only does this allow the cornerback to reach up and force the ball away, it also leads to Jeudy being injured when he hits the ground with the defender landing on top of him. This is a huge missed opportunity and a sign of a chronic issue for Wilson at this stage of his career. Finally, we see Wilson combine a number of his inconsistencies into one play that is easily the worst of his season so far. He misreads the coverage here again, forcing the ball to a covered Cortland Sutton down the left sideline when the safety is waiting for the throw to come his way. Not only does he make the wrong decision, he compounds it by dropping the ball too far infield, so that it should be easily picked off by the defender. He gets very lucky here as the ball slides through the chest of the defender. These are the inconsistencies that have existed in Russell Wilson's game for as long as he's been in the NFL. The Seahawks mitigated them by building great defenses, relying on strong running games, and never asking Wilson to do more schematically than he was capable of. You can be a very effective quarterback in the NFL in the right scenario, even without a rounded skill set. But without a rounded skill set, you won't age well. The Broncos need Wilson to offset his missed opportunities by creating big plays consistently. Can he still do that at this stage of his career? Can he still do that with an aging body? That seems unlikely. It seemed unlikely when they traded for him, and it seems even less likely after 2 games of the regular season.